Well, Andre's here today. Andre will be speaking about, works. Andre does a lot of stuff on the web, but he works mostly on modern web technology, which is what we're all about. And being a front-end developer and looking at everything at the front end to make things optimized, that's what he's about. He's serious about that. So what I'm going to be doing is making sure that we have some time to actually speak to Andre after this. So make sure you have all your questions. But this talk, I was looking forward to because this is like what I do for day to day. So it would be an interesting one to see what other new tricks I can find. Andre, please welcome. Thank you for being here.
Dwayne, I love the intro. Literally the best intro I've had at any online conference, probably even an offline conference for that matter. I'll keep this one. I'll keep this as a recording. I'll just cut it along with me if I may. Thanks, mate. That was a really good one. Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Meet Magento UK 21. What a year it has been. Is it like, I don't know, are we doing it like the Euros? Is it supposed to be Meet Magento 20 that we're doing in 21, or is it officially 21? I sometimes get confused. I normally would start this off by saying how excited I am to be here. And I look around and I go, I'm here every day and I'm probably going to be here right here tomorrow as well. So I'm less excited to be here physically, but as you can tell, I am just absolutely thrilled to have this chance to talk to you all this morning. As Dwayne has said, I've been working with the Magento community for a few years now, and I couldn't be more proud of the way that we have come. I've seen us progress from our initial conversations. I remember first meeting Jamie. Everybody knows Jamie, obviously. Thank you, Jamie, for making all of this happen. First met Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, in Barcelona, right? It was my first exposure to the Magento community. It wasn't some other Magento live event. I wasn't presenting or anything. I was just participating there for the first time. I was like wide-eyed, trying to get everything in. And just a colleague of mine, Chris, pointed towards Jamie and said, this guy, he's the guy who's building PWA for Magento. I was like, and walked off. Okay. And not only JH, but the entire Magento family has done so much work over the past few years. And we've moved into an entirely different space in terms of the capabilities of the websites that you're building right now. And now we have an opportunity to actually make sure that the websites that we're producing spark true joy in our users. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. And you might have thought I'm here to talk to you about core web vitals and boring stuff and performance and front-end development. No, I'm not. All of that is peanuts. The moment when you turn your computer on or your phone and you open up your favorite browser and you go to your favorite website and you just enjoy that experience, that doesn't happen 10 times out of 10, admit it. Right? And this is what it's all about. Having said that, it's easy to say something like this. It's difficult to define it. So we'll talk about that a little bit today as well. Well, with that done, let's see if this presentation actually works. Guys, if my slides are not showing, if I'm not coming through, you just let me know somewhere in chat or whatever, because I'm flying slightly blind here, but hopefully everything is working. Let me start by sharing a story with you. So this is one of those based on real events and real people stories with the names obfuscated so as not to put anybody on the spot. But this is Nana. She's a business owner, a Black-owned business owner in Germany. And she started her business a few years ago, focused on the idea of the support and the interest that exists in Black-owned fashion industry. And it was a very niche undertaking that blew up, well, in the most positive way possible very quickly, because she was absolutely on the money. She catered to an audience that was neglected before. She got tremendous support from her user base, which was not necessarily just Black people or people of African origin in Germany, or just everybody else, because they loved the vibrancy and the new ideas that she was bringing in. So she created one project, took it online. Then based off of that, she launched another website that was sort of more about, one was about e-commerce, another one was more about consulting and explaining interesting elements about fashion. And so so far, that sounds like an amazing success story, which it is, right? And given that, as I said, this is based on a real situation, I have tremendous respect for the lady and for all the hard work that she's put in there and for the principles that stand behind it. And then I took a look at the websites, and I built using a different platform than the one that we all know and love today, but a CMS nonetheless. And they don't spark joy. You try to open those websites, they take minutes to load. The beautiful images of the work that she's producing and her designers are producing, you never get to see them unless you, I don't know, unless you connect it directly to the transatlantic pipeline, right? And unfortunately, this is it. And that's not Nana's fault. She's not a web developer. She had this amazing idea. She had this amazing business concept that she did a bit of research, probably got somebody to consult her, chose a platform to build her online presence on, and went ahead and did that. And it's us. It's you, it's me, it's our companies. We failed Nana. Our colleagues in the other platform, whatever, like we do this day in and day out. Somebody comes in to us wide-eyed with a vision and an amazing business idea. It doesn't have to be a business idea. It could be something for the good of the society. And then we deliver to them an experience that sucks. And that's horrible. And that keeps me up at night. And we should fix that. And this is why I'm here today. And this is what we need to think about. And this is what I mean when I'm talking about optimizing for joy. When people come to see Nana's work, when people connect to her ideas, every single second of that interaction should be joyful. They should be immersed in the love that they have for the work that she's doing. And at no point start thinking, okay, I don't know, I'm not sure if did I click that button? Is that button working? When I tapped it, is this image loading? Is this going to load? Like, that should not happen. In a nutshell, that is my presentation. I could pretty much walk off and start taking your questions now. But for the sake of formality, I will go through the few slides that I do have, and then we'll definitely get to your questions, which I actually anticipate the most. 4 points for today, largely and mainly. Let's talk about what Core Vitals actually are. I did promise to do a little bit of myth busting, so I'll tell you what they are not, and I'll tell you a couple of other things that you should not be maybe doing or looking at, and definitely looking forward to your questions around this. We'll talk a little bit about why is this important, if my initial introduction wasn't enough, and then a few fast points on the tooling and performance tips. You can find, for some of you, I might open your eyes today, but I'm kind of hoping that I won't. I'm kind of hoping that most of the links that I'll share, by the way, the slides will be available online anyway. The links that I share and the information that I share, you know it, or you can Google it, you can find it. You can find it on web.dev, you can demo it, you can find it even on Magento's own documentation, right? In Adobe Commerce and whatnot, wherever you go. So it's not about so much, oh, I'm going to show you some links that you haven't seen before. It's more, let's have a chat about the first principles and see whether we agree or not, and then how do we move forward from here. Performance is damn hard to nail down. People have tried for a long time, and I don't believe we have, well, now, right? But you need to start somewhere. And a good starting point is to try to define elements of the user experience on your page that are relatively independent and yet cover most of the things that are important. Now, you want to know if it's happening, like I was saying, like, are those images, are they even going to come through? You want to know, is the website even talking to me? Like, if I click a button, if I tap a button, is something going to happen? You want to be able to find that goddamn button, because a lot of the time you think it's there and then it's not. It's like, poof, it's gone. And where is it? Oh no, it's like half a screen down and I clicked on something else entirely. Maybe an ad. Hey, look, good for you, but maybe not, because that's not the kind of click that your advertiser is looking for. So with these 3 elements, we got, I'm not saying all, but we got a good chunk of a user experience covered on the page. And luckily, we believe that we can actually measure across all of these 3 with Core Vitals. That's what this is about. It's a set of metrics that are meant to measure user experience, which is, again, as I said in the beginning, admittedly damn hard. And nobody said this was going to be perfect. But this is, so far in the past few years that I've been dealing with this, one of the best attempts at trying to quantify the stuff, to give us the tools and the approaches to try to improve things meaningfully. To think about it in the right way and improve them meaningfully. And going through the 3 channels that we mentioned before, here they are, right? So largest contentful paint is about things appearing, right? Things that the user is actually looking for. First input delay is about that ability to actually interact with the website. And again, today, unless you ask me questions about it, if you're interested, most of this can be found in the documentation. We're going to talk about the definition of what a user input is or isn't, but largely speaking, I think at a very high level, in the most common situations, we all know what it is. Like you tap a button, you start maybe providing some input in the comments. That's user input. And how long does a user need to wait between thinking that they're going to get something and actually getting it? That's FID. And then my favorite, CLS. That's the hardest one for everybody so far, at least in the past year and a half that this has been out. This has been the hardest one to get right, because we've gotten too used to neglecting that aspect of user experience. Like we're like, oh yeah, we're just going to stick divs all over the page, and then they're going to shift each other around, left, right, center, up, down, and whatever. At some point, the page is going to fully load, and the user will figure it out. It will be an hour and a half later, and the user is not going to wait that long. Anyhow, let's dive into those three in a bit more detail. Again, just in case some of you have missed the last year of us banging on about it through all the different channels. And you'll keep seeing links on the screen. Again, as I said, don't worry too much. You can screenshot the stuff now, but also there'll be a link to this entire presentation at the end. It's on SlideShare, so you can quietly and peacefully look at all the links afterwards as well. Largest contentful paint. It's when the page becomes useful in the sense that it presents what the user has come to the page for, whether it's like the headline of an article or the image of a product or whatever it is. The thresholds defined for it are defined scientifically based on experimentation, also meaning that they might change in the future, and what is good today might be mediocre tomorrow because everybody has just shifted. But for now, looking at the internet as a whole and looking at user research, these are the thresholds that have been defined for LCP. You got 2.5 seconds is good. Anything below that is, say it with me, not good. FID, that's the measure of the first of your site's interactivity. And we're looking at 100 milliseconds for everything to be right? So think about this. It's quite hard to nail if your site is full of slow JavaScript. So getting under 100 milliseconds is totally possible, and there's plenty of examples of it, but you need to be really focused on this. Having said that, from experience, FID is the metric that most sites that I interact with and most platforms get right sort of faster or easier than the other two. And finally, CLS. It's a very simple arithmetic calculation. It's the fraction of the layout shift by the distance that it shifted. And this is the example that I mainly wanted to share with you, right? It's this experience that we want to avoid when we're trying to optimize our CLS. You don't want a user to tap on exactly the opposite of what they wanted to do. After accidentally adding 56 items to their cart because the first input delay was too high and they tapped the button 55 times instead of 1, then they have all these items in the cart, and instead of getting rid of them, they actually confirm their purchase just because you shifted the button because something else popped up in the top of the page. We've all seen this experience, and we've all been frustrated by this. So we should all just pretty much stop doing this to our users and to ourselves. Once again, we got loading, we got interactivity, and we got layout stability. And together, the three of them are joy. They are the measures of joy. Right? This is that delightful, smile-provoking experience that somebody wants to talk about, share with their friends. I mean, it is kind of weird. I mean, obviously we have a little bit of a professional deformation here. It's not like all of us, well, all of our friends at least, don't walk around telling everybody, I found this like best website ever. It loads really fast and the content doesn't shift around. But they won't probably talk about it in those terms. But if they find the website you built that hits green on all of these three, there will be a spark of joy in their eyes when they first interact with it. And they will talk about it. Maybe not in these terms, but they'll just tell all their mates and their family and their friends, and they'll say, this website it's amazing. It's unlike any other website I've seen. I can actually use it. It's helpful and engaging, and I like it, and I want to go back to it, and you should probably go visit it too. And that's what you really want, whether you own the website or whether you're building it for somebody else. Now, to the point of links and confirming and being scientific, check this out for the methodology behind defining the thresholds, and actually maybe bookmark them, because I assume that these articles will be updated if and when there are any changes. So keep an eye on this stuff. But anyway, we'll keep you guys updated if there are any changes to the metrics or the thresholds all the time anyway. Why is it that we care? To underline what I've been saying. I mean, This is a technical track, so I assume a lot of us listening are the actual developers here, not so much business owners, but who knows? This is going to be available more broadly. So grab this and take it to your CMO, take it to your SEO, take it to your CPO, all the three-letter acronyms, take it to the business owners and the business leaders of your company, take it to your clients, right? Talk to them about this example. If nothing else from this presentation, talk to them about Vodafone Italy. Huge company that we don't need to go too deeply into the structure of Vodafone right now. I'm not that familiar with it anyway, but from what I can tell, they develop separately in different countries, which is why here we're not talking about Vodafone Global, but specifically the Italian example. They not only optimized, but they did a very clever thing that allowed them to understand why they care and how they can convince, like that's how the tech leads in the company can convince the business leads that this is an investment worth making. They did an A/B test between a page optimized for better LCP, right, where your most useful content actually loads, as opposed to when it does so slightly later, and actually in this case 30% later. And then they compared the results, right? And they could do this easily because this was traffic coming in from advertising channels, so they could easily split it into A and B. And the numbers speak for themselves. And this is, if you go to web.dev/vitals, or if you just look for vitals and case studies on web.dev, you'll find plenty of examples like this. This is just one of them. It works. You give users a better user experience, they'll pay you back. I was going to say in kind. No, they'll pay you back in money. They'll spend more. They'll convert better. And it will pay for the additional. So if you're looking at this from a decision-making point of view, and you need to invest engineering hours, this is where you're going to get the money for this. The increased revenue will pay for the resources that you invest in this, and several times over. Bit of news, because what sort of presentation would it be if I had entirely nothing new to announce here? This is just very slightly old news because this came out last month. But it is, I'm quite sure that not all of you have seen this maybe. A way for you to understand how your platform is doing. We didn't really have a public way to do that before. You could dig by yourselves through the publicly available Chrome User Experience Report data. But now there is a single place, a dashboard that you can go to and take a look at how any of the detectable platforms are doing, including Magento, and see the overall trends, and maybe kind of get an understanding of the sort of work that you have in front of you as a Magento developer in terms of what needs to be focused on. But you can also obviously do this by checking, we'll talk about tooling in a second, by checking your own website. And finally, the other reason that we might want to care a little bit, I purposefully leave it to the last because some people talk about it slightly more presently. I hope that you've understood by now that any slight gains in organic traffic that you might or might not get because of this are definitely secondary to the user experience gains that you get and the user love that you'll receive. But for what it's worth, this is also happening. Core Vitals are part of the page experience benchmark in Google search. This rollout is already, the rollout of this change is already happening in Google search. To be completely precise, search has announced using performance and speed as some sort of a ranking factor several years ago. So this is nothing new. What is new about this is that now we have a way to measure it. On the one hand, search was delighted to have finally a transparent and public way to measure it. And of course, you as well, yourselves, you get much less of a black box in this terms. It's not just like, oh, search is somehow magically determining if my page is fast or slow. No, it's using this specific 3 metrics based on real user data, and you have access to the same data. So if you're happy or unhappy, you know how to make the right changes and the right decisions. So more on all of that, and a very delightful study by Deloitte, which is about 1.5 years old now, but still very, very relevant, that just blew my mind the first time I saw it. And if you haven't seen it yet, I still highly recommend looking at it and sharing it inside your organization. Milliseconds make millions. It is apparently technically correct, and not just technically. It's technically correct and also factually correct. So correct in all the best possible ways. So check it out. The performance really drives revenue. Quickly about tooling, and this is a little bit more about myth busting. So core web vitals are based on real user data. You can approximate them from the lab, but the beauty of them is that you can actually measure them on real users, and that's really important because there's a huge difference between lab measurements and how they should be used and your field data. And I'll go through the tools whilst trying to maybe disambiguate some of the more popular misconceptions that I've come across before. So the first tool that we have is Lighthouse. Lighthouse has been around for a while. I think it's version 6 right now or something. It's available in multiple places. This is a lab measurement tool. So this is a tool that Google provides that you can use in different ways. You can install it and use it in your command line interface, right? It's also available as part of the auditing, performance auditing inside Chrome Developer Tools, for example. So you can run it just through your instance of Chrome. You can also go to PageSpeed Insights, and we'll get to that in a second, and run it through there. Importantly, though, what it does very simply, it pings the page that you're interested in and tries to land on it and collect some data. Obviously, it won't be able to get some of the core web vitals. So if you think about it, FID is completely unavailable to Lighthouse because if Lighthouse can't interact with the pages the way that the user would. So we can substitute FID. We can think of FID like in terms of time to interactivity or something like that and measure that instead. And even things like cumulative layout shift is not going to be fully reflective of the actual field user experience because, you know, Lighthouse isn't going to scroll through your website and encounter all the possible shifts that are possible there. Crux is a repository of data collected by Chrome, right? From users that have opted in to sharing their data and allowed us to do so anonymously. Where we have it, we collect it and we share back with all of you. So you can look into that. And this is field data. So this is importantly, real people using Chrome landed on real websites, and with their permission, we collected the metrics and are now sharing that about that website. Now, both of those, and this is where the misconception comes in, both of those are available through PageSpeed Insights. PageSpeed Insights is just an interface. But when you land, this is one of the hugest myths I want to talk about. When you land on PageSpeed Insights, the big number you see at the top, that's the Lighthouse score. So very importantly, this is a lab measurement. This is what Lighthouse managed to get about this page in particular when you requested it right now. And you requested a day from now, 3 days from now, or a week ago, it might change. And it's useful in terms of tracking the changes that you're making on the website. You change the way, for example, you started uploading, I don't know, AVIF images instead of WebP images, and you want to see what impact that has had. You can see that way, right, immediately. But that is not a core web vitals measurement, and that is not a field measurement, and it will never be, and by design, the same as a core web vitals data. And that is a very important thing to understand. And I see people come up with questions around this again and again. And if there's one thing that you remember here is that you need to base your performance optimization strategy on field data. You have access through Search Console. You have access through Chrome DevTools, as I mentioned. You have a Web Vitals Chrome extension that you can install if you want to just see the performance of various pages as you browse the internet. Finally, there's a very useful, very small JavaScript that you can put on your website to collect your own user data, right? And that is the big, like, not this specific JavaScript, but the general concept of collecting your own data is probably the best recommendation and the highest recommendation I can give you. So remember this, try out with webvitals.js, you have the link. Learn how to connect it to Data Studio or any other endpoint that you like, and start making decisions based on real data. Very quickly, because again, most of this is in the documentation, but very quickly, I'll share a few tips about the main things that go wrong with each of these 3 metrics that we discussed. With LCP, remember, it's not the first thing that emerges on the page, and not the last thing. It's the thing that out of all the things that have emerged in the viewport, the browser has determined to be the largest, and therefore the most important. Things that obviously affect this are server response times. That's obvious because it needs to fetch that. Definitely render blocking JavaScript and CSS because it needs to render that big thing. And client-side rendering. A very quick way to illustrate this is using web page test. If you go in there, so you got the delay before the largest content could even be fetched, caused by render blocking JavaScript and CSS. Then the actual network delay, and that very much depends on the size of the image and how optimized it is. And only then you hit LCP. So optimize for this. With CLS, a million things can go wrong. We've optimized a little bit and read up on the changes at the link here. We've optimized a little bit how we calculate it. It's a slightly less less bad, let's put it this way, for everybody, because we're not calculating the CLS for the lifetime of the page anymore, but through so-called windows. And yet still, this is one of the hardest ones to get right. But images without dimensions set, we got dynamically injected content, we got web fonts loading very slowly. All of this causes a shift. Small shift in the case of some fonts, humongous shift in the case of certain embeds. Define, even if you don't hit it 100%, you might not need to hit it 100%, first of all, because you have a margin of error, right? CLS doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be better than a certain threshold. Plus, let me let you in on an inside tip here. It doesn't need to be even better than a certain threshold, it just needs to be better than everybody else of your competitors. That's what you need to be aiming for. So even if you can't get it right, even if there's no way for you to know the exact height, let's say, of an ad unit that is coming in dynamically, define a placeholder of some height that is approximately right. That means that the shift that you will get will at least be smaller than the shift you would get otherwise. Start with small things like this, small logical things that you could come up with yourself if you thought about it, right? And don't try to aim for perfection, just try to aim for continuous improvements. And finally, with FID, again, and you've heard this like for the third time, everything is JavaScript. I think we're just, there'll be an interesting article coming out soon called JavaScript Ate the World. Yeah, right? It's what makes the web beautiful. It's also what slows the web down. So let's deal with this, right? I don't have one recommendation to cover them all, and we're not going like, it deserves its own separate conversation about all the JavaScript optimization tricks. But if your bundles are too large, think about unbundling them so that it becomes slightly smaller and the less relevant stuff loads later. On the other side of that spectrum, if your files are too small and you have way too many of them causing too many network requests, think about combining some of them. Find the middle ground. And we have a ton of instructions and ton of information about improving your JavaScript. What can you do right now? So the first thing I can't emphasize enough, I mentioned it before, start measuring using your own real data. Ton of tools out there. Choose your own. Choose any place you want to start with. Again, you have the links. That's a good starting point. Tons of third-party tools already available that allow you to measure real user data. And let's recap and hopefully get to your questions. First of all, don't be afraid to start small and build changes incrementally. Prioritize. You have 3 metrics to choose from. You can go to PSI as a good starting place, see which one you're doing the worst on, start dealing with that. If you can, A/B test. And it's not so difficult to A/B test because you could set up the simplest ads campaign to 2 different versions of the same page and just see the different results. Right? That's what Vodafone did. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And ideally, get into the habit of continuously monitoring this stuff. Just set up your own preferred way of doing it, but do it for Christ's sake. Look at this the same way you look at all your other critical performance indicators, and make sure that any regressions are caught in time, are reverted, and then you find alternative solutions that actually help you get things right. As I said, these slides are going to be over here. I'll give you an extra second or two to grab this link, screenshot it, do whatever you need to do. Go find them all there. It's mainly, like, there's nothing mind-blowing in these slides, but just in case you wanted to have all those links, they're all there. And that's it. Let's keep talking. That's the most important thing. That's what I'm here for, right? Let's talk now. Find me online. I'm really eager to hear your concerns, your questions, your ideas about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Andrey. There are so many questions that came in, and we're going to get straight into it. So one of the questions was asked is, why Core Web Vital and not some other matrix?
I have a sneaking suspicion that it might have been a question I set up for myself.
Yes.
Let's just share with the audience a little bit. But because if I didn't cover it enough in the talk, let me just reiterate that. all metrics are good. These are good because they're based on real user experience, right? So that's fundamental. We have a way, finally, again, it's not ideal and it'll be worked on and improved, but it's a way to look at what your actual users are seeing. And therefore, and you can think about all the implications of this, like your users in Africa and your users in the Middle East and your users in America will get an entirely different experience from the same web page, right? Because they are connecting with different connections and different devices. And that's fine, that's by design. That enables you to understand what priorities you have and what choices you need to make. That's number one. Then this, like, it's easy to have one number is not enough. It can be like, I can't imagine being comprehensive with just one simple number, one simple score. 200 metrics is too cumbersome and you're not able to really track that kind of number. This is some sort of a middle ground. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's some sort of a middle ground that enables us to be comprehensive and cover as much of the user experience as possible, be relatively independent. These three of them are independent of each other. They have some impact on each other. And you saw that, for example, JavaScript impacts them all. But generally speaking, there are three different parts of the user experience. So they give you three different angles to look at it from. And yeah, so that's the reason we're sticking with this for now. And we're definitely taking a ton of your feedback on board to continue improving them. And this, for example, going back to the CLS example, just changed how we measure it earlier this year. And we'll keep on doing it, not arbitrarily, but based on what we learn from you and from the industry at large.
Thank you very much for explaining that. I think because I do Core Web Vitals in my day-to-day. So Data Studio is something that we have set up for all our clients. So I think the other day we were able to see where a Magento module was installed, and over a period of about 2 days, you could see where it affected the Core Vitals because it had cache enabled on it, right? And it shouldn't have been basically shouldn't have had it on. But one of the questions that I think prompts us was, if you had like limited resources, right? Would it be better to spend the time being the best you can get from what you have as a website? Or would you track that against competitors and try to just match up to where your competitors is?
It's like that. I don't remember which running shoes there were, but it's like this one of my favorite ads with the cheetah and the two blokes running. And one of them starts running and the other one starts putting on his running shoes. And the other guy's like, well, like, what are you doing? You're not going to outrun the cheetah in those running shoes. I don't need to outrun the cheetah. I just need to outrun you. So I hope that answers your question. Of course, your first step, and also you now have, you saw it, right? You have a way to look at Magento very broadly.
Yeah.
And maybe even other e-commerce platforms also through the new dashboard that came out. Plus, using PSI, you can check out pretty much any website out there. So define your own competitive, sort of environment.
Yeah.
Set up monitoring of that and try to make sure that at the beginning, you're at least head and shoulders above everybody else around you. And once you're there, then you make incremental changes until you're perfect based on A/B testing and seeing how much incremental revenue that brings you.
That's really good that you touch on revenue, because how do you measure the revenue that a client makes from investing in Core Web Vitals? How do you do that?
Well, you do what Vodafone did, right? You run a campaign, you have a slow page and a fast page, and then you check out, oh, look at that. People on the fast page apparently are paying us more money because they're converting more. Like, that's simple as. And it's harder sometimes for publishing experiences, which rely on advertising revenue. For e-commerce experience, it's a lot more straightforward. I mean, are they getting to your cart? Are they adding products to the cart? Or are they waiting for the little circle of the product image to load and going, is this a bicycle or is this a pair of skis? I'm not sure, you know? So if they get all this stuff faster, the logical explanation is that they should put more of it in their cart, and that they should also be happy enough to actually complete the transaction. And you should be able to measure that quite directly.
Nice one. Last question that I will ask is, so if all my Core Web Vitals are green, will my site be #1?
Yes, for you and your mom, for sure, right? But if we're talking about ranking here, there's no guarantees of anything as far as ranking is concerned, right? So this is something you definitely want to keep an eye on, and absolutely go into Search Console and understand what sort of insights it gives you. But this is not something you need to base your quarterly planning on. This is not something you should focus your KPIs on. Your KPIs, luckily, you're able to set them against real user experience. So you can either look, if you don't have a direct way to look into your revenue data, you can look at your user experience data, how much time people are spending on the site, how often are they coming back to the website, how often are they sharing the pages of your website. All of that can be impacted by a better user experience. But on top of all of that, you definitely have revenue data. And sort of looking at how that impacts, how your performance impacts your ranking in Google or other search engines is a thing you could do, but it definitely should not be the thing that you do.
Thank you so much. Andrey, I want to say thank you so much. I can see the passion. I can feel it. I appreciate you coming and talking to us about Core Web Vitals. As I said, like, this is what I do day to day. So all these tips that you're giving me is like, yes, I will definitely follow some of these, definitely. But what I would say to the audience, because there's so many questions that came in, I would actually ask that you actually follow Andrey on Twitter and basically reach out to him. He's one of the warmest, kindest guys that I know. Like, I literally speak to him within a couple of minutes. He returned back, giving me all the information that I need to make sure that this presentation went well, to make sure I'm all relaxed, right? See how I'm relaxed? It's because of him. So please reach out to him on all the social media platforms. Reach out to him, say hello, ask you questions. He will definitely get back to you. And I know we have loads of questions that we couldn't fill today, but time pertaining, so we have to do.
We'll do another thing, if I may also do, and let's collect all the questions that we received. Yeah. Right. And I'm committing right here to you and to all of our viewers right now to maybe publish a post with answers to all of them or something like that. Right. Definitely do come and follow me and ask me all those questions one by one. But I think it will be, so for us to be fair, that you don't feel like you have to ask your questions twice. We'll try to come back to you all at once. Can we do that?
Yes, I will collect all of these. So you see, he's making me do more work. I love it.
But with a smile on your face, look at that.
So, yeah, thank you so much again, Andrey.